I apologize for my tardiness. Welcome to The Gentleman Psychic, the new chapter, both in the Murder on the Orient Express and in my own personal life. Now, tonight I am not being joined by my moderator. Lots of new things are coming along. Hello, Draco. Good to see you. So, for those of you who do not know, before you get into the book, hello, Dee. Lovely to see you. Before we get into the book, for those who do not know, I have moved across country. I no longer live in the Pasadena ritual house as seen on Ghost Adventures. I now live in a beautiful Victorian house in New York. So I'm about an hour and a half from New York City by car. I'm about an hour and a half from Sleepy Hollow. I am about 3 hours from Salem. I don't remember how many hours from Boston, but not very far. Hello, Christina. Hello. What happened to the house? Well, Jim, lovely to see you. Hello, Raven, lovely to see you. Hadn't seen any videos in a while. Yes, Ran, I was moving, so there was a lot that was going on. I have another video that I'll be editing that'll be coming out soon. So yeah, it was just, it was sort of abrupt. Somebody asked me what happened to the Pasadena house. I was only renting there. I'm renting here too. The problem was that I am an independent contractor and I pre-qualified for a house loan of $200,000. And then of course, the thing that keeps us all indoors and not working has, I can't say it because they'll demonetize, but that is what had affected me. So I was moving out of state and they said, okay, we need 2 years taxes. Fine, not a problem. Then they said, now we need 2 years taxes, and because you're an independent contractor, a spreadsheet. I went, okay, that's fine. And then they said, now we need 2 years taxes, a spreadsheet, and because you're moving out of state, we need a family member who resides with you, who has a credit score of 700 or better. And I went, well, I guess I'm going to be renting. So thanks to the independent contractor. Anyway, that's what's sort of going on there, but I'm renting. It's a lovely I really don't know for sure, late 1870s, early 1880s Victorian. I will actually be showing you a tour as sort of things progress. I did on my Facebook page, but I will be doing it here. I'll be doing a live walkthrough. Right now, I ended up by going to the emergency room today because as I was traveling, I was eating travel foods, things that I shouldn't eat anyway. And then I get here to this little town and I have the trailer on the back of the car and I can't take it to the supermarket. I can't go to the grocery store. And there's only one restaurant, it's right over here, one restaurant that opens up at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I made the mistake. I ordered French fries with my burger. And I'm allergic to potatoes, but sometimes it doesn't really affect me. But what I am allergic to is the things that they fry potatoes in. Oftentimes it's peanut oil, or it's canola oil, corn oil, or coconut oil. All of these things, they mess with me. I'm very allergic. So I swelled out in terrible hives. I was looking like Quasimodo. Went to the emergency room today. And it was fun because, I look better now, but I was really red and swollen. But while I was there, I was able to communicate with some of the nurses, and they are going to be joining me here for a session at one point in the near future. So that was a good positive that came out of it. I was going to sit on a wall that was not so blank behind me. I know it's kind of boring. It's not my usual thing. but then I realized that I don't have an outlet over there for the light and the phone, and I was really low on battery. So now we get those announcements out of the way. Be looking for a new video that will be coming out this week, and also be looking for another live video, which will be impromptu. I don't really know when it's going to be. I'm going to give you a tour of my new abode. At any rate, my darlings, without further ado, yes, I feel much better now, thank you. It worsened, and I thought that I could drink more water, and I thought that I could, I thought that I could pass it off, and it got to the point where I had to go to the emergency room. Now, mind you, years and years ago, I've had to go to the emergency room several times for those. The first time it had happened, I was, oh goodness, I must have been in my early 20s, and I worked at a sunglass hut in the mall, and since it's mall food, I mean, this is how long ago it was, mall food, you know. So I thought I would be a little bit healthier, not by much, but a little bit healthier, and I was eating, and I don't want to say it now, but it's a Christian company that serves chicken, and I didn't realize that they were as bigoted as they are, and I used to eat there. And then I found out one day I started itching, and then my eyes swelled too, and I've been eating this Chick-fil-A, I've been eating this place every day. So at the end of my shift, I drove to the emergency room holding my eyes open like this. And I get there, and he says, well, tell me what's going on. I said, well, you know, I've got this play that I'm doing, and I'm working. He goes, oh, it's just stress. I said, no, this is not stress. He said, well, with your play. And I said, no, I've done hundreds of plays. It's not stress. He said, well, I am allergic to peanuts, and sometimes those allergies, they develop, and maybe one day you'll find out that's what it is. Well, I found out I am allergic to peanuts. But I'm also allergic to all legumes, so that means cocoa, it means lentils. I have reactions to almonds, peppers, cucumbers, spinach, celery, bananas, plantains, watermelon, pepper, cinnamon, ginger. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It's a lot of things that I do not eat. So I survive with, I eat a lot of salmon. I eat a lot of fish because I would be a vegan. I can't be because of my body. I'm allergic to, soy, that's another thing. So I'm allergic to a lot of things that are supposed to be really healthy for you. Carrots also bother me, especially when they're raw. Those things. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get right into Murder on the Orient Express. I hope you're feeling better. Did they say what exactly caused the allergy reaction? Tim, I'm pretty sure what caused it this time was that I ate the French fries, or the chips as you call them across the pond. I ate them knowing that I probably shouldn't have, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. And you can still kind of see on my hand. Anyway, hello, Mary Jo, lovely to see you. Okay, my darlings. Well, I think I've waited enough time for people to join us. Also, if you are enjoying my channel, I did just move, so if you can give to my PayPal, which is rlillard6@gmail.com. You can also give donations to my Venmo at Richard-Lael, Lael, Lillard. So Richard-Lael Lillard. That's on PayPal and Venmo. Any amount helps. Because again, I love YouTube. I love what it does, but I make pennies off of this. I don't really make much of anything because I don't have a large enough audience. Now, mind you, I will tell you that if you can't give, I still appreciate it. If it doesn't hurt you, I appreciate it. But if you can't give, you can share my channel, you can share my videos, you can leave comments down below, because that really does help the algorithms. It helps me to get back up. So yes, welcome back to the Gentleman Psychic in the new location. Without further ado, my darlings, let us continue. Oh, last question before story time. What kind of things do you like? I'm thinking of home warming gifts. Well, Tim, thank you so much for that question. I'm kind of particular with things that I like. A card is always often nice, or just even a thank you, I'm thinking of you is fine. Things I like. I that's a really hard question for me. Anything to do with the devil, I love that. Yeah, anything sort of macabre. I'm really kind of a, who knows. You'll have to DM me for my address because I don't really know it right now myself. Huh. It's a weird thing. Anyway, my darlings, now we shall continue reading Murder on the Orient Express, chapter 12. Chapter 12. The evidence of the German lady's maid. Monsieur Bouc was looking at his friend curiously. I do not quite understand you, mon vieux. You were trying to do what? I was searching for a flaw, my friend. A flaw? Yes, in the armor of young lady's self-possession. I wish to shake her sang-froid. Did I succeed? I do not know. But I know this. She did not expect me to tackle the matter as I did. You suspect her, said Monsieur Bouc slowly. But why? She seems a very charming young lady, the last person in the world to be mixed up in a crime of this kind. I agree, said Constantine. She is cold. She has not emotions. She would not stab a man. She would sue him in the law courts. Poirot sighed. Ah, you must both of you get rid of your obsession that this is an unpremeditated and sudden crime. As for the reason I suspect Miss Debenham, there are two. One is because of something that I overheard and that you do not know as of yet. There's a train, by the way. He retailed to them the curious interchange of phrase he had overheard on the journey from Aleppo. That is curious, certainly, said Monsieur Bouc, when he had finished. It needs explaining. If it means that what you suspect it means, then they are both of them in it together, she and the stiff Englishman. Poirot nodded. And that is just what is not borne out by the facts, he said. You see, if they were both in this together, what should we expect to find that each of them would provide an alibi for the other? Is not that so? But no, that does not happen. Miss Debenham's alibi is provided by the Swedish woman whom she has never seen before. And Colonel Arbuthnot's alibi is vouched for by McQueen, the dead man's secretary. Not that solution of the puzzle is too easy. You said there was another reason for your suspicion of her, Monsieur Bouc reminded him. Poirot smiled. But that is only psychological. I asked myself, is it possible for Miss Debenham to have planned this crime? Behind this business, I am convinced there is a cool, intelligent, resourceful brain. Miss Debenham answers to that description. Monsieur Bouc shook his head. I think you are wrong, my friend. I do not see that young English girl as a criminal. Ah, well, said Poirot, picking up the last passport. To the final name on our list. Hilgrade Schmidt, lady's maid. Summoned by the attendant, Hilgarde Schmidt came into the restaurant car and stood waiting respectfully. Poirot motioned for her to sit down. She did so, folding her hands and waiting placidly till he questioned her. She seemed a placid creature altogether, eminently respectable, perhaps not over-intelligent. Poirot's method with Hilgarde Schmidt were a complete contrast to his handling of Mary Debenham. He was, at his kindest and most genial, setting with the woman at her ease. Then, having got her to write down her name and address, he slid gently into his questions. The interview took place in German. "We want to know as much as possible about what happened last night," he said. "We know that you cannot give us much information bearing on the crime itself, but you may have seen or heard something that, while conveying nothing to you, may be valuable to us. You understand?" She did not seem to. Her broad, kindly face remained set in its expression of placid stupidity as she answered, "I do not know anything, monsieur." "Well, for instance, you know that your mistress sent for you last night?" Yes." "Do you remember the time?" No. I do not, monsieur. I was asleep. You see, when the attendant came to me..." Oui, yes. Was it usual for you to be sent for this in this way?" "It is not unusual, monsieur. The gracious lady often required attention at night. She did not sleep well." "Ah, bien. Then you received the summons and you got up. Did you put on your dressing gown?" "No, monsieur. I put on few clothes. I would not like to go into Her Excellency in my dressing gown." "And yet, it is very nice dressing gown. Scarlet, is it not?" She stared at him. "It is dark blue flannel dressing gown, monsieur." "Ah, continue. A little pleasantry on my part, that is all. So you went along to Madame la Princesse, and what did you do when you were there?" "I gave her massage, monsieur. And then I read aloud. I do not read aloud very well, but Her Excellency was, that is all the better. So it sends her better to sleep. When she became sleepy, monsieur, she told me to go. I closed the book and I returned to my own compartment." "Do you know what time it was?" "No, monsieur." "Well, how long had you been with Madame la Princesse?" About half an hour, monsieur." "Good. Continue." "First, I fetched Her Excellency an extra rug from my compartment. It was very cold in spite of heating arrangement. The rug over her, and she wished me good night. I poured her out some mineral water. Then I turned out the light and I left her. And then... there is nothing more, monsieur. I returned to my carriage and went to sleep." "And you met no one in the corridor?" "No, monsieur." "You did not, for instance, see a lady in scarlet kimono with dragons on it?" Her mild eyes bulged at him. "No, indeed, monsieur. There was nobody about except the attendant. Everyone was asleep." "But you did see the conductor?" "Yes, monsieur." "What was he doing?" "He was out of one of the compartments, monsieur." "What?" Monsieur Buch leaned forward. "Which one?" Hilgarde Schmidt looked frightened again at Perrault, cast a reproachful glance at his friend. "Naturally," he said. "The conductor often has to answer bells at night. Do you remember which compartment it was?" "It was about middle of coach, monsieur. 2-3 doors from Madame la Princesse." "Ah, tell us, if you please, exactly where this was and what happened." He nearly ran into me, monsieur. "It was when I was returning from my compartment to that of Princess with the rug." "And then he came out of compartment and almost collided with you? In which direction was he going?" "Towards me, monsieur. He apologized and passed down on the corridor towards the dining car. A bell began ringing, but I did not think he answered it." She paused and then said, "I do not understand. How is it?" Perrault spoke reassuringly. "It is a question of times," he said, "all a matter of routine. This poor conductor, he seems to have had a busy night, first waking you and then answering the bells." "It was not the same conductor who woke me, monsieur. It was another one." "Ah, another one. Had you seen him before?" "No, monsieur." Ah, do you think you would recognize him if you saw him? Yeah, I think so, monsieur. Perrault murmured something in Monsieur Bouc's ear. The latter got up and went to the door and gave an order. Perrault was continuing his question in an easy, friendly manner. Have you ever been to America, Frau Schmidt? Never, monsieur. It must be fine country. You have heard, perhaps, of who this man was killed really was, that he was responsible for the death of the little child? Yes, I have heard, monsieur. It was abominable wicked. The good God should not allow such things. We are not as wicked as that in Deutschland. Tears had come into the woman's eyes. Her strong, motherly soul was moved. It was an abominable crime, said Perrault gravely. He drew the scrap of cambric from his pocket and handed it to her. Is this your handkerchief, Frau Schmidt? There was a moment's silence as the woman examined it. She looked up after a minute. The colour had mounted a little in her face. Ah, no, indeed, it is not mine, monsieur. It has the initial H, you see. That is why I thought it was yours. Oh, monsieur, it is a lady's handkerchief, that. A very expensive handkerchief, embroidered by hand. It comes from Paris, I should say. It's not yours, and you do not know whose it is? I? Oh, no, monsieur. Of the three listening, only Perrault caught the nuance of hesitation in the reply. Monsieur Bouc whispered in his ear. Perrault nodded and said to the woman, The 3 sleeping car attendants are coming in. Will you be so kind as to tell me which is the one you met last night, as you were going with the rug to the princess? The 3 men entered. Pierre Michel, the big blonde conductor of the Athens-Paris coach, and the stout burly conductor of the Bucharest one. Hilgarde Schmidt looked at them and immediately shook her head. Oh, no, monsieur. None of these is the man I saw last night. But these are the only conductors on the train. You must be mistaken. No, I am not. I'm quite sure, monsieur. These are all tall men, big men. The one I saw was small and dark. He had little moustache. His voice when he said pardon was weak like woman. Indeed, I remember him very well, monsieur. Chapter 13. Summary of the passenger's evidence. A small dark man with a woman's voice, said Monsieur Bouc. The 3 conductors and Hilgarde Schmidt had been dismissed, but I understand nothing, of all of this. The enemy that Israchet spoke of, he was then on the train after all, but where is he now? How can he have vanished into thin air? My head, it whirls. Say something then, my friend, I implore you. Show me how the impossible can be possible. It is a good phrase, that, said Perrault. The impossible cannot have happened, therefore the impossible must be possible in spite of appearances. Explain to me then quickly what actually happened on the train last night. I am not a magician, mon cher. I am, like you, a very puzzled man. This affair advances in a very strange manner. It does not advance at all, it stays where it is. Perrault shook his head. No, that is not true. We are more advanced. We know certain things. We have heard the evidence of the passengers. And what has that told us? Nothing at all. I would not say that, my friend. I exaggerate, perhaps. The American, Hardman, the German maid, yes, they have added something to our knowledge. That is to say, they have made the whole business more unintelligible than it was. No, said Perrault soothingly. Monsieur Bouc turned upon him. Speak then. Let us hear the wisdom of Hercule Poirot. Did I not tell you that I was, like you, a very puzzled man? But at least we can face our problem. We can arrange such facts as we have with order of method. Pray continue, monsieur, said Dr. Constantine. Poirot cleared his throat and straightened a piece of blotting paper. Let us review the case as it stands at this moment. First, there are certain indisputable facts. The man Rachet or Cassetti was stabbed in 12 places and died last night. That is fact one. I grant it to you. I grant it, mon vieux, said Monsieur Buc with a gesture of irony. Hercule Poirot was not at all put out. He continued calmly. I will pass over for the moment certain rather peculiar appearance which Dr. Constantine and I have already discussed together. I will come to them presently. The next fact of importance to my mind is the time of the crime. That again is one of the few things we do know, said Monsieur Buc. The crime was committed at 1:15 this morning. Everything goes to show us it was so. Not everything. You exaggerate. There is certainly a fair amount of evidence to support that view. I am glad you admit that, at least. Poirot went on calmly, unperturbed by the interruption. We have before us three possibilities. One, that the crime was committed, as you say, at 1:15. This is supported by the evidence of the German woman, Hilgarde Schmidt. It agrees with the evidence of Dr. Constantine. Possibility 2. The crime was committed later and the evidence of the watch was deliberately faked. Possibility 3. The crime was committed earlier and the evidence faked for the same reason as above. Now, if we accept possibility 1 of the most likely to have occurred and the one supported by the most evidence, we must also accept certain facts arising from it. To begin with, if the crime was committed at 1:15, the murder cannot have let the train and the question arise. Where is he? And who is he? To begin with, let us examine the evidence. Is this... To begin with, let us examine the evidence carefully. We first hear of the existence of this man, the small, dark man with womanish voice, from the man Hardman. He says that Ratchet told him of this person and employed him to watch out for the man. There is no evidence to support this. We only have Hardman's word for it. Let us not examine the question. Is Hardman the person he pretends to be, an operative of New York Detective Agency? What, to my mind, is so interesting in this case is that we have none of the facilities afforded to the police. We cannot investigate the bona fides of any of these people. We have to rely solely on deduction. That, to me, makes the matter very much more interesting. There is no routine work. It is a matter of the intellect, I ask myself. Can we accept Hardman's account of himself? I make my decision and I answer, yes. I am of the opinion that we can accept Hardman's account of himself. You rely on the intuition, what the Americans call the hunch, said Dr. Constantine. Not at all. I regard the probabilities. Hardman is traveling with a false passport. That will at once make him an object of suspicion. The first thing that the police will do when they arrive upon the scene is to detain Hardman and cable as to whether his account of himself is true. In such case of many of the passengers, to establish their bona fides will be difficult. In most cases, it will probably not be attempted, especially since there seems nothing in the way of suspicion attaching to them. But in Hardman's case, it is simple. Either he is the person he represents himself to be, or he is not. Therefore, I say that all will prove to be in order. You acquit him of suspicion? No, not at all. You misunderstand me. For all I know, any American detective might have his own private reasons for wishing to murder Ratchet. No, what I am saying is that I think we can accept Hardman's own account of himself. This story, then, he tells of Ratchet's seeking him out and employing him is not unlikely, and is most probably, though not, of course, certainly, true. If we are going to accept it as true, we must see if there is any confirmation of it. We find it in a rather unlikely place, in the evidence of Hilgarde Schmidt. Her description of the man she saw in wagon-lit uniform tallies exactly. Is there any further confirmation of these two stories? There is. There is the button found in her compartment by Mrs. Hubbard. And there is also another corroborating statement which you may not have noticed. What is that? The fact that both Colonel Arbuthnot and Actor McQueen mention that the conductor passed their carriage. They attach no importance to the fact, but Monsieur Pierre Michel has declared that he did not leave his seat except on certain specified occasions, none of which would take him down to the far end of the coach, past the compartment in which Arbuthnot and McQueen were sitting. Therefore, this story, the story of a small dark man with a womanish voice dressed in wagon-lit uniform, rests on the testimony, direct or indirect, of 4 witnesses. One small point, said Dr. Constantine. If Hilgarde Schmidt's story is true, how is it that the real conductor did not mention having seen her when he came to answer Mrs. Hubbard's bell? That is explained, I think. When he arrived to answer Mrs. Hubbard, the maid was in with her mistress. Then he finally returned to her. When she finally returned to her own compartment, the conductor was in with Mrs. Hubbard. Mr. Bouc had been waiting with difficulty until they had finished. Yes, my friend, he said impatiently to Poirot. But whilst I admire your caution, your method of advancing a step at a time, I submit that you have not yet touched the point at issue. We are all agreed that this person exists. The point is, where did he go? Poirot shook his head reprovingly. You are in error. You are inclined to put the cart before the horse. Before I can ask myself where did this man vanish to, I ask myself, did such a man really exist? Because you see, if the man were an invention, a fabrication, how much easier is it to make them disappear? So I try to establish first that there really is such a flesh and blood person. And having arrived at the fact that there is, bien, where is he now? There are only 2 answers to that, mon cher. Either he is still hidden on the train in place of such extraordinary ingenuity that we cannot even think of it, or else he is, as one might say, 2 persons. That is, he is both himself and man feared by Monsieur Rachet and a passenger on the train so well disguised that Monsieur Rachet did not recognize him. It is an idea that, said Monsieur Bouc, his face lighting up. Then it clouded over again. But there is one objection. Poirot took the words out of his mouth. The height of the man, is that what you would say? With the exception of Monsieur Rachet valet, all passengers are big men. The Italian, Colonel Arbuthnot, Hector McQueen, Count Andreini. Well, that leaves us the valet. Not a very likely supposition. But there is another possibility. Remember the womanish voice? That gives us choice of alternatives. The man may be disguised as a woman, or alternatively, he may actually be a woman. A tall woman dressed in man's clothes would look small. But surely Rachet would have known. Perhaps he did know. Perhaps already this woman had attempted his life wearing men's clothes, the better to accomplish her purpose. Rachet may have guessed that she would use the same trick again. So he tells Hardman to look for a man, but he mentions, however, a womanish voice. It is a possibility, said Monsieur Bouc, but listen, my friend. I think that I should not tell you of certain inconsistencies noticed by Dr. Constantine. He retailed at length the conclusions that he and the doctor had arrived at together from the nature of the dead man's wounds. Monsieur Bouc groaned and held his head again. I know, said Poirot sympathetically. I know exactly how you feel. The head spins, does it not? The whole thing is fantasy, cried Monsieur Bouc. Exactly. It is absurd, improbable. It cannot be. So I myself have said, and yet, my friend, there it is. One cannot escape from the facts. It is madness. Is it not? Is it so mad, my friend, that sometimes I am haunted by the sensation that really it must be very simple? But that is only one of my little ideas. 2 murders, groaned Monsieur Bouc, and on the Orient Express. The thought almost made him weep. And now, let us make the fantasy more fantastic, said Perrault cheerfully. Last night on the train, there are 2 mysterious strangers. There is the wagon-lit attendant answering to the description given by Monsieur Hardman and seen by Hilgarde Schmidt, Colonel Arbuthnot, and Monsieur McQueen. There is also a woman in a red kimono, a tall, slim woman seen by Pierre Michel, by Miss Debnam, and by McQueen, and by myself. And smelt, I may say, by Colonel Arbuthnot. Who was she? No one on the train admits to having a scarlet kimono. She, too, has vanished. Was she one and the same with the spurious wagon-lit attendant? Or was she some quite distinct personality? Where are they, these 2? And, incidentally, there is the wagon-lit uniform and the scarlet kimono. Ah, that is something definite, Monsieur Bouc sprang up eagerly. We must search all passengers' luggage. Yes, that will be something. Perrault rose also. I will make a prophecy, he said. You know where they are? I have a little idea. Where then? You will find the scarlet kimono in the baggage of one of the men, and will find the uniform of the wagon-lit conductor in the baggage of Hilgarde Schmidt. Hilgarde Schmidt, you think? Not what you are thinking. I will put it like this. If Hilgarde Schmidt is guilty, the uniform might be found in her baggage. But if she is innocent, it certainly will be. But how? Began Monsieur Bouc, and stopped. What is this noise that approaches? He cried. It resembles a locomotive in motion. The noise drew nearer. It consisted of shrill cries and protests in a woman's voice. The door at the end of the dining car flew open. Mrs. Hubbard burst in. It's too terrible, she cried. It's just too terrible. In my sponge bag, a great knife all over blood. And suddenly toppling forward, she fainted heavily on Monsieur Bouc's shoulder. Chapter 14. The Evidence of the Weapon. With more vigour than chivalry, Monsieur Bouc deposited the fainting lady with her head on the table. Dr. Constantine yelled for one of the restaurant attendants who came at a run. Keep her head so, said the doctor. If she revives, give her a little cognac, you understand? Then he turned off after the other 2. His interests lay wholly in the crime. Swooning middle-aged ladies did not interest him at all. It is possible that Mrs. Hubbard revived rather quicker with these methods than she might otherwise have done. A few minutes later, she was sitting up, sipping cognac from a glass proffered by the attendant, and talking once more. I just can't say how terrible it was. I don't suppose anybody in this train can understand my feelings. I've always been very, very sensitive, ever since a child. The mere sight of blood, why, even now I come over queer when I think about it. The attendant proffered the glass again. En cure in pied, madame. Do you think I'd better? I'm a lifelong teetotaler. I just never touch spirits or wine at any time. All my family are abstainers. Still, perhaps this is only one medical. She sipped once more. In the meantime, Perrault and Monsieur Bouc, closely followed by Dr. Constantine, had hurried out of the restaurant car and along the corridor of the Stamboul coach towards Mrs. Hubbard's compartment. Every traveller on the train seemed to be congregated outside the door. The conductor, a harassed look on his face, was keeping them back. Mais il n'y a rien à voir, he said, and repeated the statement in several other languages. Let me pass, if you please, said Monsieur Bouc. Squeezing his rotundity past the obstructing passengers, he entered the compartment, Perrault close behind him. I am glad you have come, monsieur, said the conductor with a sigh of relief. Everyone has been trying to enter. The American lady, such screams as she gave, ma foi. I thought she too had been murdered. I came to the run, and there she was screaming like a madwoman, and cried out that she must fetch you, and she departed, screeching at the top of her voice, and telling everybody whose carriage she passed what had occurred. He added with a gesture of the hand, "It is in there, monsieur. I have not touched it." Hanging on the handle of the door that gave access to the next compartment was a large-sized checked rubber sponge bag. Below it on the floor, just where it had fallen from Mrs. Hubbard's hand, was a straight-bladed dagger, a cheap affair, sham oriental with an embossed hilt and tapering blade. The blade was stained with patches of what looked like rust. Perrault picked it up delicately. "Yes," he murmured. "There is no mistake. There is our missing weapon, all right, docteur?" The doctor examined it. You need not be so careful," said Perrault. "There will be no fingerprints on it to save those of Mrs. Hubbard." Constantine's examination did not take long. "It is the weapon, all right," he said. "It would account for any of the wounds." "I implore you, my friend, do not say that." The doctor looked astonished. "Already we have overburdened by coincidence 2 people decided to stab Monsieur Rachette last night. It is not much of a good thing that each of them should select an identical weapon. As to that, the coincidence is not, perhaps, so great as it seems." As to that, the coincidence is not perhaps so great as it seems, said the doctor. "Thousands of these sham Eastern daggers are made and shipped to the bazaars of Constantinople." "You console me a little, but only a little," said Perrault. He looked thoughtfully at the door in front of him. Then, lifting off the sponge bag, he tried the handle. The door did not budge. About a foot above the handle was the door bolt. Perrault drew it back and tried again, but still the door remained fast. "We looked at it from the other side, you remember," said the doctor. "That is true," said Perrault absently. He seemed to be thinking about something else. His brow was furrowed, as though in perplexity. "It agrees, does it not?" said Monsieur Bouc. "The man passes through his carriage, and he shuts the communicating door behind him. He feels the sponge bag, and thought comes to him, and he quickly slips the blood-stained knife inside. Then, all unwitting that he has awakened Mrs. Hubbard, he slips out through the other door into the corridor." "As you say," murmured Perrault. "That is how it must have happened." But the puzzled look did not leave his face. "But what is it?" demanded Monsieur Bouc. "There is something, is there not, that does not satisfy you?" Perrault darted a quick look at him. "The same point that does not strike you? No, evidently not. Well, it is a small matter." The conductor looked into the carriage. "The American lady is coming back." Dr. Constantine looked rather guilty. He had, he felt, treated Mrs. Hubbard rather cavalierly, but she had no reproaches for him. Her energies were concentrated on another matter. "I'm just going to say one thing right out," she said breathlessly as she arrived at the doorway. "I'm not going on any longer in this compartment. Why, I wouldn't sleep in that tonight if you paid me $1 million. "But, madame, I know what you're going to say, and I'm telling you right now that I won't do such a thing. Why, I'd rather sit up all night in the corridor," and she began to cry. "Oh, if my daughter could only know! If she could only see me now, Perrault interrupted firmly. "You misunderstand, madame. Your demand is most reasonable. Your baggage shall be changed at once to another compartment." Mrs. Hubbard lowered her handkerchief. "Is that so? Oh, I feel better right away. But surely it's all full up unless one of the gentlemen..." Monsieur Bouc spoke. "Your baggage, madame, shall be moved out of this coach altogether. You shall have a compartment in the next coach, which was put on Belgrade." "Why, that's splendid. I'm not an out-of-the-way nervous woman, but to sleep in that compartment next door to a dead man..." Oh, she shivered. "It would drive me plumb crazy." "Michel," called Monsieur Bouc, "move the baggage into a vacant compartment in the Athens-Paris coach." "Oui, monsieur. The same one as this, number 3? "No," said Perrault. Before his friend could reply, "I think it would be better for madame to have a different number altogether. The number 12, for instance." "Bien, monsieur." The conductor seized the luggage. Mrs. Hubbard turned gratefully to Perrault. That's very kind of you and delicate of you. I appreciate it, I assure you. Do not mention it, madame. We will come with you to see you are comfortably installed. Mrs. Hubbard was escorted by the three men to her new home. She looked round her happily. Oh, this is fine. It suits you, madame. It is, you see, exactly like your compartment you have left. That's so. Only it faces the other way, but that doesn't matter, for these trains go first one way and then they go the other. I said that to my daughter. I want a carriage facing the engine. And she said, why, Mama, that'll be no good to you, for if we go to sleep one way, when you wake up, the train's going to be going the other. And it was quite true what she said. Why, last evening we went to Belgrade one way and out the other. At any rate, madame, you are quite happy and contented now? Well, no, I wouldn't say that. Here we are stuck in a snowdrift and nobody doing anything about it, and my boat sailing the day after tomorrow. Madame, said Monsieur Bouc, we are all in the same case, every one of us. Yes, that's true, admitted Mrs. Hubbard, but nobody else has had a murderer walking right through their compartment in the middle of the night. What still puzzles me, madame, said Perrault, is how the man got into your compartment. If the communicating door was bolted, as you say, you are sure it was bolted? Why, the Swedish lady tried it before my very eyes. Let us just reconstruct that little scene. You were lying in your bunk, so, and you could not see for yourself, you say. No, because the sponge bag. Oh my, I shall have to get a new sponge bag. It makes me feel sick in my stomach to look at this one. Perrault picked up the sponge bag and hung it on the handle of the communicating door into the next carriage. Précisément, I see, he said. The bolt is just underneath the handle, and the sponge bag masks it. You could not see from where you were lying whether the bolt were turned or not. Why, that's just what I've been telling you. And the Swedish lady, Miss Holson, stood so between you and the door. She tried it and told you it was bolted. That's so. All the same, madame, she may have made an error. You see what I mean? Perrault seemed anxious to explain. The bolt is just projection of metal, so turn to the right, the door is locked. Left straight, it is not. Possibly she merely tried the door, and it was locked on the other side. She may have assumed it was locked on your side. Well, I guess that would be rather stupid of her. Madame, the most kind, the most amiable are not always the cleverest. That's so, of course. By the way, madame, did you travel out of Smyrna this way? No, I sailed right to Istanbul, and a friend of my daughter's, Mr. Johnson, a perfectly lovely man, I'd like to have you know him, met me and showed me all around Istanbul, which I found very disappointing city, all tumbling down, and as far as the mosques and putting on those great stuffing things over your shoes, where was I? You were just saying that Mr. Johnson met you. Yes, that's so, and he saw me on board a French messagerie boat for Smyrna, and my daughter's husband was waiting right up in the quay. What he'll say when he hears about all of this, my daughter said this would just be the safest, easiest way imaginable. You just sit in your carriage, she said, and you get right into the Perus, and there are the American Express will meet you. And oh dear, what am I to do about canceling my steamship passage? I ought to have let them know. I can't possibly make it now. This is just too terrible. Mrs. Hubbard showed signs of tears once more. Perrault, who had been fidgeting slightly, seized this opportunity. You have had a shock, madame. The restaurant attendant shall be instructed to bring you along some tea and some biscuits. I do not know that I am so set on... Oh, I don't know that I'm so set on tea, said Mrs. Hubbard tearfully. That's more of an English habit. Coffee then, madame. You need some stimulant. That cognac made my head feel mighty funny. I think I would like some coffee. Excellent. You must revive your forces. My, what a funny expression. But first, madame, a little matter of routine. You permit that I make search of your baggage? Whatever on earth for? You are about to commence on a search of all the passengers. We are about to commence on a search of all of the passengers' luggage. I do not want to remind you of an unpleasant experience, but your sponge bag, remember? Mercy, perhaps you'd better. I just couldn't bear it to get more surprises of that kind. The examination was quickly over. Mrs. Hubbard was traveling with minimum of luggage, a hat box, a cheap suitcase, and a well-burdened travel lining bag. The contents of all three were simple and straightforward, and the examination would not have taken more than a couple of minutes had not Mrs. Hubbard delayed matters by insisting on due attention being paid to photographs of my daughter and two rather ugly children. My daughter's children, aren't they cunning? I think, my darlings, that is where we are going to end for the evening, chapter 15. I will be back next week to read you more from the murder on the Orient Express. And look for more videos. There's going to be more videos coming out this week. I've got some things planned. And again, if you're enjoying this channel, I appreciate you. If you can leave anything and it's not going to hurt you, you can find me on Patreon under... join me on Patreon under the gentleman psychic, and then you can also find me on PayPal under rlillard6@gmail.com, and on Venmo at Richard-Lael, L-A-E-L, Lillard. If you can give, it's people like you who keep independent contractors like me above board. I appreciate you. And that was great. I look forward to future posts. All right, thank you, Malika. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. Until next week, for more live reads. There might be, by the way, I'll announce it on the Facebook page. There might be a live view of my home, which I would love to have you along. Anyway, have a good night, my darlings. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being my supporters. Thank you for being my friends. I hope you have a great day, a great afternoon, a great morning, wherever you are listening to this. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Take care.